even after you graduate architecture school, someone's still gonna be there to judge your designs. So here's what I learned this week from presenting my designs to my boss. Welcome to another episode of the Weekly Wrap-Up. My name's Tyler, and I'm a designer at an architecture firm here in California. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by, I appreciate it. I post weekly updates of what it's like to work in an architecture office, as well as anything else related to architecture and design. So if you find that kind of stuff interesting, consider subscribing down below, and let me know what else you want to see from me. Alright, so let's get into this week's work. Last week I asked you all to vote on 3 designs I did for another roof canopy structure. This was at a different school than the last 2 I showed, where the designs were the same because the front of the schools were identical. This last school had a unique look, so those roof canopies had to be designed differently to fit in that context. I didn't really like those 3 designs, and this week I got an opportunity to come up with another option that I think fits better and looks better. But I'll talk about that in a minute. Before I get into that, I want to do something a little different with these weekly wrap-ups. In previous episodes, I've been explaining what my job is as a designer in an architecture firm. The goal in the beginning was to take you all through the projects that I work on and show you the different tasks that I have to do throughout the entire duration of a project. I want to take this to the next level and start providing some value to anyone watching that's currently studying architecture or that might be considering studying architecture. And I'm going to do this by extracting things that I've learned after each week of work and providing them to you in a clear, concise lesson. That way, you're better prepared for your future as an architect. The point is to show you my mistakes so you don't have to make them. I showed the 3 roof canopy designs for School A last week, but I didn't get to work on them yet for School B. But I did show the process of modeling in the context and the existing administration building. But this week, I finally got to work on those roof canopy designs for School B, and these are some cool ones. This is the administration building, and it has a lot of great elements that I used as inspiration for my designs. The front walls here are angled out at about 7 degrees. There's a step back parapet, and there's a little gable roof at the entrance. There's also these 2 windows at the entrance that are recessed really far back into those angled walls. We're also doing some site work here and adding concrete at the front to create an open courtyard for the main entrance. This is also where the roof canopy is gonna go. Design option number 1 copies those angled walls at the front entrance. I used those angled walls to create supports under a single slope roof. The angle of the walls and the supports are in the same direction, so it's almost like an extension of the building. And the single slope of the roof is in contrast to the gable roof, but it's wrapped in stucco and trimmed with the same color so it looks like it fits in. From the front, you almost can't tell that the walls are angled, but the side view tells all. Design option number 2 uses those same angled walls, but in a different way. I took those walls and I rotated them 90 degrees from the way the building walls are angled out. The roof structure is a copy of that gable roof from the building above it. This implies a more direct connection to the building when compared to option number 1. But the front view almost makes it look like a house. What do you think? Design option number 3 is a stripped down version of number 1. Instead of finishing the roof with stucco and trim, I used a bare bones structure instead. The benefit here is that this is a lot cheaper to do. The pipe columns at the front are angled out in such a way that they still tie back to those angled walls at the building, but in a different way. Design option number 4 is a simplified combination of number 2 and number 3. I combined the rotated angled walls of number 2 with the stripped down structural simplicity of number 3, and I used the gable roof shape to tie back to the existing building. This is probably the most simple and cheapest option out of the 4, but that doesn't necessarily make it the worst. So I mentioned before that we still do pinups in my office, and if you went to architecture school, you're very familiar with these. I did them throughout all my years of school, and I've had my fair share of harsh critiques and presentations, so I know what you guys are going through. After working on all of these roof canopy designs for all 4 of these schools, it was time to show them to my boss. I took all the designs and all the renderings I've been showing you and printed them out to pin them up in my office. This is probably one of the most stressful things to do in architecture school. Trust me, I know. You know you're gonna have to present your work, and you know your instructor's probably gonna rip it to pieces. Or at least that's how my presentations always went. So I showed these all to my boss, and we had conversations about which one he liked best and how to improve them. For the first two schools I showed you where the building designs were the same, everyone voted on number 1, and that's the one I liked too. After showing all of these to my boss, I was actually surprised to find out he liked number 3 the most. His reason is that number 1 looked like it had always been there, which is what I thought was its strength. I meant for it to blend in with the existing buildings, but this just meant that it didn't really distinguish itself as the main entrance from the rest of the school. Number 3 stands out just enough, but still uses some elements from the school like the columns and the brick planters. My boss suggested a couple design changes, so this is what I did. I added another piece to the roof on the backside to connect it to the roof of the existing building. This also provided a great place for signage, and some planters and benches on the opposite side helped to better define the waiting area. We also added in some strategically placed lights to give it that extra bit of life. So for all of you that are in architecture school and your instructor tells you to redesign something, trust me, I know how you feel. It's frustrating to spend a lot of time on something only to have to change it later. You might be thinking, why can't you leave me alone? Why do I have to change this? I don't want to change this. I think it looks good as it is. I spent a lot of time on this. I worked hard on this. And when it comes to presenting your work, I know you probably get nervous and scared to get up there and talk about it. But if you have good teachers, their comments are meant to help you. The thing is, they're not as familiar with the design as you are, and they're not as emotionally invested in it as you are. Sometimes you get stuck looking at your design through a telescope, and the other person is seeing it through a bigger picture perspective. On this next one, these are the 3 designs that I showed last week, and I didn't really like these options, and neither did my boss. We agreed that there needed to be a 4th option with a more finished look. The comment I got on those first 3 is that they looked like they could be ordered from a catalog, which is kind of harsh, but it's true. If your client is paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for your work, it seems like kind of a waste if it's not a great custom design that fits their needs. So I worked on a 4th option based on the conversations I had with my boss, and this is what we came up with. We took the vertical louvers that you see here on the building, and we used them as horizontal shading devices for the roof canopy. There's these partial walls on either side of the louvers, so I borrowed those as supports for my roof. There's already an administration sign on the building, so I don't think we need to make one for this canopy. All right, I saved the best for last. Out of the 4 design options that I showed at the beginning of this video, my boss liked number 1 the most, and so did I. But he had a few ideas on how to improve it, and I think this just might make it the best design out of all of these. We decided to take the roof pitch and shoot it further out into the sky to make the entry more pronounced. This required some extra supports, but it gave us an opportunity to use those angled walls again, but this time we sloped them in the opposite direction. Now here's where things get really interesting. That extra bit of roof sticking out gave us an opportunity to punch a hole in it. Now I know what you're probably thinking. Doesn't that mean it's not really providing protection from the weather now? And you're right, but it's far enough out from the entry that the rest of the canopy is still providing that protection. The hole in the canopy is a place for someone to stop, look up, and experience the sky before proceeding through the entry. In architecture, this is called the procession. It's a way of making someone experience multiple things as they're making their way to the entrance. The best part about this design is that it ties back to the existing building even stronger now. Remember those deep recessed windows at the front walls? By adding parapets to the canopy, we're making a deeper opening and we're connecting it back to those windows. I have a feeling this is going to be a hard one to sell to the client, but with this explanation, I think we can do it. This is all a part of the job of architecture. Just like in school, when you have to justify your designs to your instructor, you have to do it 10 times more to a client who's paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to build this. But like I said earlier, this is the importance of going through presentations and critiques. It helps strengthen your arguments, and it makes us better architects and designers. I really hope this helped with any frustrations you might be having about redesigning your projects. And if you got something out of this, consider liking the video. Don't forget to comment your favorite design on the roof canopies from this week, and check out last week's video for those designs too. But for now, that's gonna do it for this episode of the Weekly Wrap Up. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.